My fiancée cried. It was just one night, one mistake. You can forgive one night, right? After I found out about her affair, I responded, just one night? Then I showed her the hotel receipts, texts, and photos spanning 8 months. When she realized I had been gathering evidence, everything in her face changed at once like the air had been sucked out of the room. And I want to be clear this didn't start with me being suspicious or paranoid or controlling, because I wasn't of those things. I'm 32. My name's Daniel. And until about 6 weeks ago, I thought I was one of the luckiest guys I knew, engaged to Emily, together for 4 years, wedding 2 months away, deposits paid, invitations mailed, families already talking about seating charts and speeches, my mom crying every time she talked about walking me down the aisle. That kind of life, the stable one, the one you planned toward. And the way it blew up wasn't dramatic at first. No screaming, no crashing revelations. Just me coming home early from a work trip on a Thursday afternoon because a client wrapped faster than expected. And I thought surprising her would be a nice thing. Something she'd smile about. Maybe we'd order takeout and watch one of those stupid shows she liked. So I unlocked the door quietly and stepped inside, and the apartment was calm in that midday way. Sunlight through the blinds, quiet on the fridge, her shoes by the door, and her phone was on the kitchen counter buzzing softly. Screen lighting up, and I wouldn't have touched it if it hadn't been unlocked, and if the name on the screen hadn't been marked, Jim, and if the preview hadn't said, last night was insane, same place next week, because you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes and know that's not about protein shakes. So I picked it up, my heart already doing something weird and hollow, and I opened the thread, and I scrolled, and I kept scrolling, backwards through months, through jokes, complaints about me being boring, comments about how they needed to be more careful, photos I didn't want to see, hotel names I recognized because I'd stayed in some of them for work, dates lining up perfectly with nights she told me she was working late or out with. Her friends were too tired to talk. I just sat down on the couch with her phone in my hand and stared at the wall like my brain had pulled the emergency brake. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even really think. I just sat there until I heard the shower turn off and then the bathroom door open, and she walked out wrapped in a towel and stopped when she saw me in her phone, and her whole face drained of color. And she said, "You're home early." Like that explained anything. And I asked, "Who's Mark really?" And she froze and said, "What are you talking about?" And I held up the phone and said, "Jim, buddy." And she reached for it, and I pulled it back and said, "Pack a bag and leave." And that's when the crying started, the real kind, shaking, gasping, saying it wasn't what it looked like, saying we needed to talk, saying she loved me. And I just kept repeating the same sentence like a broken record, because if I stopped, I was afraid something ugly would come out. So she packed, slowly, dragging it out, tried to get me to engage, asking if we could sit down, if I was really doing this. And eventually she left just before midnight. And after the door closed, I didn't feel devastated or angry. I felt cold, like someone had turned the temperature of my body down 10 degrees. And that's when the other part of my brain kicked in, the part that doesn't do well with unanswered questions. So I started documenting everything, screenshots of every message, emailing them to myself, digging into our shared cloud account we use for wedding planning, and finding backups of photos she'd never meant for me to see, checking her email, and finding hotel receipts forwarded to herself, expense reports labeled work travel that definitely weren't work, and then the credit card, the one I added her to years ago because I trusted her, and seeing charges stack up from restaurants and bars and hotels on nights. She told me she was exhausted or stressed or just needed space. And by sunrise, I had a complete timeline, 8 months of lies laid out cleanly and clearly, dates, places, proof, not one mistake, but hundreds of choices. And when she texted me the next morning asking if we could talk and telling me she loved me, I didn't respond. And when her sister Jessica called telling me Emily messed up, but that people make mistakes and don't I think I'm being harsh, I told her to check her email and sent her everything. And my phone exploded after that, calls, texts missed, calls piling up, and finally a message from Emily saying, "Please let me explain. It's not what it looks like." And I replied, "It looks like you've been sleeping with your coworker for 8 months while planning our wedding. What am I misunderstanding?" And after that there was silence until she asked if she'd come get her things, and I said be quick. And she showed up the next day with Jessica and her mom Karen. And I'd already boxed most of her stuff because I wanted it done fast. And Karen walked in like she was preparing for a courtroom speech, talking about how marriage takes work, and you can't just give up when things get hard. And I said calmly, things didn't get hard. Your daughter had an affair for 8 months. And Emily tried to interrupt, saying it wasn't that many times, and I started reading dates off my phone until she told me to stop. And when she said she didn't want to leave because it was her home, I reminded her her name was never on the lease, and I watched. That reality hit her in real time. And then she asked about the wedding deposits, and I told her I paid for everything, and I'd be getting refunds where I could, and cancellation fees were par contracts. And she cried harder and said people work through this stuff all the time. And I said people work through one-time mistakes, not 8 months of lying. And Karen tried to pivot it back to forgiveness and understanding, and what I might have done wrong. And I told her maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't perfect. But Emily could have talked to me or broken up with me instead of lying every day while planning a wedding, and that I wasn't interested in understanding why, just in ending it. And when Emily asked if she could quit her job and do counseling and cut all contact, I said, what if you have enough self-respect to stop begging someone who doesn't want you anymore? And that finally shut the room down, and they loaded her boxes in silence. And when she told me at the door that she really did love me, I said, you love what I provided, there's a difference. And after they left, I sat down at my laptop because there was one thing left I hadn't decided yet. The guy she'd been sleeping with, his name was Ryan. I found him on LinkedIn and then on social media, married, 2 kids, wife named Laura. And I spent 2 days going back and forth in my head about whether to tell her. Because I didn't want revenge, I wanted clarity. And I kept coming back to the same thought. If someone had known and not told me, I'd never forgive them. So I sent Laura a message explaining who I was and what had happened, and attached enough proof that it wasn't just an accusation, and she replied, quickly thanking me for telling her and saying she was sorry we were both dealing with it. And 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Ryan telling me I destroyed his family and ruined his kids' lives, and that I had no right. And then Emily and her family started blowing up my phone telling me I was vindictive and cruel and that I'd crossed a line. And I replied once telling Emily that Laura deserved to know who she was married to, just like I deserved to know who I was about to marry. And after that, I stopped responding, blocked numbers. And when Emily's dad, Tom, asked to meet, I agreed, because he was the only one who hadn't tried to guilt or threaten me. And we met at a coffee shop, and he told me he wasn't there to defend her. Just understand what happens now. And I told him what happens now as I move on. The wedding is canceled. I'll lose about $8,000 in deposits. It sucks, but it's better than marrying someone who lies that easily. And when he asked of telling, Laura was really necessary. I asked him if he'd want to know if his wife was cheating, and he admitted he would. And when he said Emily thought I did it for revenge, I said she was trying to avoid responsibility. And he almost smiled when I said the fact that it made her life harder was just a side effect. And when he asked if there was any chance of reconciliation, I said no second chances, no friendship, nothing. And he told me he respected me more now than before and wished he'd seen this. Backbone earlier, and after that I blocked Emily everywhere, canceled vendors one by one, ate the losses, went for a beer with my best friend Mike, who told me I was handling it well, and I told him I'd been a wreck for 6 hours, and then stopped because it wasn't helping. And over the next few weeks the noise slowly died down. Laura filed for divorce. Emily tried reaching out through new numbers and mutual friends. Her mom told people I was cruel and unforgiving. Emily and Ryan tried dating for a few weeks before he went back to his wife and then got kicked out again. And on the day our wedding would have been, I sat on my couch eating takeout and felt strangely calm. Not happy exactly, but lighter, like I stepped out of the path of something heavy. And now 6 weeks later, I repainted the bedroom, renewed the lease, gone on a few casual dates. Nothing serious. And when people ask what happened, I tell them she cheated for 8 months. And they say I'm sorry, and I say, don't be. I dodged a bullet. And the truth is I don't miss Emily. I miss the version of the future I thought we were building. And that's not the same thing. And I've learned I'd rather be alone than with someone I can't trust. And that short-term pain beats long-term misery every time. And the wedding that didn't happen turned out to be the best thing that never did. Because my apartment is quiet, my life is drama-free. I answer to nobody. And while it's not the life I planned 2 months ago, it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative. And I'm completely okay with that.